Welcome to Murfreesboro Storytellers, a bicentennial celebration. I'm your host, John Hood. Our city is celebrating its 200th birthday, and each month of this over a year-long celebration has a theme to showcase everything that's made Murfreesboro special. Over the next several months, our program will cover a variety of topics, from our work to our music to so much more. This month, the theme for the Bicentennial is about our faith. And our guests today are Madge Lewis, community activist and columnist for the Murfreesboro Magazine. Welcome, Madge.
Thank you. Thank you, John.
Nancy Vaughn, church historian of the First Baptist Church on Castle Street and the author of a recent play entitled Bethel. Welcome, Nancy.
Thank you.
And finally, Bill Ledbetter, a Murfreesboro native, retired businessman, and also a co-chair, honorary co-chair of the 200th birthday of the First Presbyterian Church of Murfreesboro.
Thanks, John.
Bill, I guess your topic goes back further than any of the three of you. Tell us about the First Presbyterian Church and how it started in Murfreesboro.
All right, around, let's take it back before 1800, when American Indians were living in this area, and they were trading with the settlers here. Then we became a state in 76. And around 1800 then, with having become a state, there was an influx of people coming in, Irish, Scotch, and many of the people that came in around the 1800s had Presbyterian backgrounds, Presbyterian beliefs, and they sort of were congregating together and getting together. And in June of 1811, they applied for a charter. Murfreesboro was then Canonsburg, and it took until the next April, so that would be April of 1812, for them to get the full charter. Well, people can't understand why, and then we were Murfreesboro, of course, as you know, the name got changed. So it became then, in April of 1812, an established Presbyterian church, then called the Murfree Springs. It was located for all purposes. Let's look at the Discovery House. The Discovery House, the back of the Discovery House is Murfree Springs. Right. That area was very well populated due to the spring. And there was a schoolhouse on the hill behind what they call the old ice plant, but no one remembers that. So let's just say above the spring, above the spring was a, they vary in size, say 15 by 30 or something. And that was no windows, no fireplace, just a door, and that's where the church met.
I see.
And it met there for many years. And they then outgrew that church, that schoolhouse. So now this has been mentioned in several histories, that they moved to another schoolhouse, which is located now around the area of Junior's Food Town on Main Street, and the Episcopal Church right in that area. And there they met then into the courthouse. And then they became so large that they moved to their location on Vine Street. Now, Captain Lytle gave them the acreage in it's the southwestern, not of the cemetery though, it's the northwestern corner of the cemetery.
The city cemetery?
A city cemetery.
Right. Okay.
Captain Lytle gave them, and the interesting thing is in the deed, he said he gave them the land in 1820, plus the building that was on the land. Well, the church had already been built in 1818, and in 1818 that was the first Presbyterian church. That's why they changed their name and became. But so the Presbyterians came in here around 1800 with a school as Murfree Springs, and then First Presbyterian Church around 1818 to 1820.
And didn't the legislature meet in that church building at one time when it was convening here?
You remember that Murfreesboro was, the legislature sat here, was pseudo-capital the state. And the courthouse burned then in 1822, and the First Presbyterian Church was a logical spot. It had the building had a balcony that ran on 3 sides of the building. They then extended that and made a floor, and the House of Representatives met on the bottom floor, and the Senate of Tennessee met on the 2nd floor. And it was in 24 of that year that they were to support Andrew Jackson for president, which he did not win, but the legislature did meet there.
I see.
And they met that, so I don't know how much further you want to go.
We've got it established. We'll come back in a minute and talk about more what's going on.
I was going to say, I'm getting a little carried away here.
Oh, you're fine. Nancy Vaughn, we've introduced her as historian for the First Baptist Church on Castle Street. If you will, the location of the African American Baptist Church initially, right, Nancy?
The location for it was on the corner of West Sevier and Spring Street. And the parsonage itself, where the pastor stayed, was directly on the corner. We stayed in this particular location until urban renewal for the city of Murfreesboro came through in the 1950s, and they purchased the property from First Baptist for a price of $35,900, and helped us to find another location, which is on the corner of Bilbro and East Castle, and that's where the present church is located now. Of course, we have expanded the church, but that's where we are located.
And the downtown, if you will, First Baptist Church on East Main was instrumental in organizing and forming the church. Is that correct?
The downtown East Main Church belonged to First Baptist East Main.
All right.
And there was a slave community located here by the name of Bethel. There were quite a few slaves whose owners belonged to First Baptist Church.
I see.
Later on, the minister, Pastor Eden at First Baptist East Main, said that it would be nice for the slaves to have a preacher to come to their area where he could minister them in their homes, and then in the afternoon of that Sunday that he was here, he was allowed to preach to the slaves in the church. His name was Nelson Grover Mary, and the year that he came to this area was 1853. And he became very popular in the community. How he got to Nashville was the fact that he was born in Virginia, and he had lived in Virginia with his owners. His owners happened to be from Sumner County. Okay. And when Mr. Mary died, Mrs. Mary did not want to remain there, so she moved back to Sumner County, Tennessee. And later, as Nelson began to grow up, she knew he had to have some type of formal education. That's what she wanted for him. So what she did, she contacted First Baptist Capitol Hill, which at that time in history was a Caucasian church. And she willed Nelson to this church. They took him under their wing, and they ordained him in 1853.
And Bethel is the name you gave to the play that you presented back last November, and being presented again during the month of April about the history of the church, correct?
Bethel itself was a community. You see, some of the slaves were trustworthy enough to live in a community of their own and work in the big houses or on the plantations. So if there was no trouble caused to anything, they were allowed to remain in this settlement.
Where was Bethel located?
Bethel was located in southeast Rutherford County. John Lodell and I have tried our best to locate where this specifically was. we have never been able to find the exact place.
I understand.
But if it's southeast Rutherford County, then it would be in the area around Bradeville Pike, heading out towards the Manchester area.
All right, in that general area. Good. Thank you, Nancy. Madge Lewis, you come to tell us about the history of the Catholic Church in this community, which doesn't trace back nearly as far as these churches. Is that correct?
I was going to say, we're newcomers
Relatively
compared
newcomers.
To these people. And my mother was from Boston, and she was horrified when she came here the first time, and she found out what a small little church we had. But Mrs. Christie, who was practically the founder of the church, was saying, you just don't know. We used to meet in my house, which was Billy Ledbetter's house, Billy and Sally.
Which is an interesting coincidence. I was not aware of it until Billy told us about that.
And Mrs. Christie was from a large, very influential Catholic family in Nashville. And so she became the spearhead to start the church in Murfreesboro. Then there was a couple that came through Murfreesboro, and their last name was Hoffman.
All right.
No Catholic church, so
Okay.
they were very unhappy. So Mrs. Hoffman went back to New York, and she gathered some support and sent a large donation down to build the church. And Mrs. Christie had a lot to do with where the church was placed, which was on the corner, probably 2 blocks from Billy's house, of Lytle and University. And it was later purchased by Mr. James A. Ridley to be a house when our church was sold by one of our priests, and he moved us into a Quonset hut on the back of what we had purchased as a rectory on Greenland Drive. And you know, we were thinking, are we going to survive this priest? But he was very instrumental in getting the new church built in Bel Air subdivision.
Was that Father Breen, or was that after Joe Breen?
Oh Lord, that was way before him.
Way
before
Breen,
him.
Okay.
The first church was in 1928, and they had missionary. It was a mission church.
That's the way I knew the Catholic Church growing up. It was only a mission here in Murfreesboro.
Right. And so Father Elliott was the priest there when I first remember in 1941. And he was stationed, in fact, he was the principal of Father Ryan High School. Nashville had a large Catholic community, but Murfreesboro, it hadn't rolled over here.
Correct.
And there's many funny stories. My mother taught at Ward Belmont, and she had met my father, and one day she was walking a bunch of girls down to the cathedral, and my father was in front of the Kappa Sig house throwing a baseball at Vanderbilt. And he said, where do you think you're going? And she said, I'm going to church. What are you going to church today for? She said, it's a holy day of obligation. A what? A holy day of obligation. I'm Catholic. He said, you're not. I am Catholic. You're not. That was kind
And she was.
She was. She definitely was. And she was a big influence when she came here, but nothing like Mrs. Christie.
Madge, what is the size of the St. Rose Catholic Church now?
Well, we have 1,320, I think, families. We have 5 services, 3 on Sunday and 2 on Saturday. So it's rather large compared to when my mother and father and I, first time I remember it, there were 30 families.
30.
A lot of them were the Italians. And the Italians moved from Sicily, and in a large number. And that really put the church on the map.
Tamburo families,
The Tamburo, the
families,
Georges, well, and it was funny, they were all from the same place in Sicily, and how we were so blessed that they all came here was very good, very, very good. And they have been a mainstay for us.
Wonderful business people and great community citizens, they certainly were.
Yes.
And you also operate a school as well, St. Rose.
We do operate the school, and we are blessed to have the nuns from Nashville, from the Sisters of Charity. And they have been a wonderful influence on the children, and we have, well, when we were certified by the, whatever it is, something of the the Tennessee.
The Southern Association of Schools.
That's exactly, excuse me.
SACS.
And they, in their commentary, said that our school had people with more degrees than any other school they had ever interviewed. So that was pretty good.
When did you relocate to North Tennessee Boulevard, I will call it?
Well, it was in 1952. I remember it well because I was in college.
Okay.
And Father Ballantyne was the one who had sold the church, moved us into the Quonset hut, and the hero of that time was Mr. John Woodfin, because here we were trying to go to school in this little, church in this little Quonset hut, and Mr. Woodfin let us use his funeral chapel. And so from then on, Mr. Woodfin was the main name from the people in the church.
Mr. John, what a great fellow.
What a great fellow, and he's had some pretty great daughters,
good family,
and
wonderful family, right?
And now, my goodness, the Parsons family. I'm thinking of David Parsons. Is two good families moving together.
Moving together. Bill Ledbetter, tell us about what's going on this year to celebrate the 200th anniversary of the First Presbyterian Church. Some special events?
Well, yes, they are very active. As you said, my wife and I sat in on the first meeting. I thought it'd be take several hours. It was very well organized. They knew exactly what they were going to do. They decided that they would celebrate from June when they applied for the charter until April. So we're having a big banquet in April to celebrate the 200 years. But they have activities going on down there. It's amazing. It's amazing American youth and what they can put together. But a lot going on down there.
Located downtown and has been there since when?
During the Civil War, the church that was in the cemetery, so to speak, was dismantled, and the only thing salvaged out of it was a bell. The bell, it was a small steeple, and in 1831 they bought a bell. The bell was there on the ground. I don't know how they got. I know nobody climbed up there and picked up a 500-pound bell, but they did save it during the war and put it on the new building that was built in, give or take, 1867, 8. I think it was dedicated in 8. And then a tornado, they called it the cyclone of 1913, took the whole front end of it out to the ground. Again, they saved the bell and the back end of the church, and the bell is still ringing today.
Still there and still ringing?
Yes, and they, in 13, and then they dedicated the church in 1914, and we've been there ever since.
That's when we've rebuilt after the cyclone.
Yeah, rebuilt after the cyclone, yes.
Right.
Yes. But, so they met from Murphy Springs to Main Street, then to Courthouse, and then to Spring and College.
In college, right. Nancy Vaughn, tell us about the First Baptist Church of today. How large a congregation do you have there, and what are some of the activities that go on?
Oh, we have lots of ministries. I am a part of the Autumn Workers Ministry. I'm also a part of the bereavement ministry, but anything that needs to be done, Pastor has put it under the head of a ministry. So everyone is involved in something. We have about 800 in our congregation now. We started the first of the year having 2 services. We have an 8 o'clock service, and then we have a 10:30 service. Pastor is the 37th pastor that has come to our church. His name is Pastor James M. McCarroll, very dynamic young man. We're just delighted to have him. I go back 3 generations in First Baptist Church. My grandmother was a member, my mother, and now myself. My husband, I'm very proud to say that. He is the head deacon of the church, and he works very, very hard. Now, a little bit back about Pastor Mary. He stayed in the Murfreesboro area until around 4 years.
Okay.
He came in 1853. And during one of the services, rumors had already spread about something that he was doing. And of course, First Baptist East Main at present time investigated, and they found out that the rumor was not true. It was just a bunch of disgruntled people that did not want him to be doing what he was doing in the community. And during one of the services in the church, he was attacked. And he
Physically
was
attacked?
physically attacked, stripped, without any clothing, and beaten.
Who attacked him?
People in the community that did not want him.
People in the church?
The creation of the church
No.
was controversial, right? The organization of the separate church.
Bringing him here. First Baptist did not have any objection to that because they were the ones that brought him here. But you must understand there were other people living in Murfreesboro at that time. And this man was the first black minister to come into the Murfreesboro area.
And was popular and successful.
Popular with his people and successful with First Baptist East Main now and the community of Bethel. But you had other people in the community that did not want anything like this to take place. About 18, he stayed here 4 years. He stayed here 4 years.
In the 1850s, you say?
And then he was chased out. And he left just ahead of a lynch mob. They were getting ready to lynch him. You know, that part was depicted in the
This
play.
is depicted in her play, Bethel, and it's brought out very clearly that it was a controversial situation.
But what he did, he made his way back to Nashville. And later on, First Baptist, Capitol Hill in Nashville, turned the church over to Nelson Grover Mary. And it became a Baptist church for black people or for Negroes in that area. And he became a very successful person.
At the same church where the Reverend Kelly Miller Smith presided for many
Very
years.
same church there. And of course, he's buried in Mount Everett. That's what it used to be, but it's Greenwood
Pastor Mary
Cemetery.
is,
His tomb is there now in Greenwood Cemetery. Greenwood Cemetery number 2.
Number 2. Thank you very much. Madge, tell us about St. Rose of today and what's going on
I
there.
was thinking about when she was talking about controversial, when the Catholic Church was coming to Murfreesboro and building a building. I didn't know this until I looked it up in the Google area, and it said that the Ku Klux Klan came to town to oppose the building because they didn't want an organization here that was controlled by a European principality, so to speak.
All the way from Rome.
All the way from Rome. They were going to control Murfreesboro, Tennessee.
I think I heard something about that in the 1960s also.
Well, I did not know it at all.
Having to do with the presidential election I'm talking about
Oh,
now.
sure.
Yeah.
Well, John Kennedy did a lot to dispel the prejudices and the fears around the Catholic Church. But I called Mr. Siegenthaler, and then I met with him, and he said, I'm going home and read about that, and I never heard from him, so I guess everything was on the up and down.
So what happened? Did they actually come and demonstrate?
He didn't tell me that, but he did say that, well, what I was unhappy with him about was he was comparing it to what's happening now with the Mormons in Murfreesboro, and I didn't think that was fair. He shouldn't have fired that up, but he is a great speaker, and he can just set you right down. So he sat me right down.
Yeah, John Siegenthaler is quite an interesting gentleman.
He really, really is. And of course, he was very involved with the Kennedys.
Yes.
And he loved the Kennedys.
Well, he worked for them directly.
He did. He did. So it was just interesting to hear him talk, and he's a dynamic speaker. Father Breen that you were speaking of just had his 50th Jubilee.
Okay.
And John Siegenthaler gave the talk that night.
Father Breen, one of my favorites. Bill Ledbetter, you have some of the comment. Our time is running out, but we'll wind up.
Looking back at the late 30s, 40s, the what I call Christian churches of Murfreesboro really did not work together.
Well,
Christian churches,
right.
they were they just didn't work together. And if you remember, I mean, and now I think the Christian churches they'll have meetings together. And I know back then in the 50s they started having small attendance at prayer meetings and Sunday night services. So several of the churches got together and had them together. But I think that's a good thing. That even I understand on the mission fields there was great resentment in denominations of Christian people who ought to be working together instead of
good point.
fighting each other.
Certainly many
fighting in a good word, but
certainly many other churches in our community. But this brings out the First Presbyterian Church, the First Baptist Church,
be working together,
the Catholic Church, and their roles in the community.
Yes.
Any other comments you had to add, Madge? Were you about to, Nancy?
I am so happy that this happened. No one else had bothered to write anything that brought First Baptist East Main and First Baptist East Castle together. Because very few people in Murfreesboro realize that First Baptist East Main is our mother church.
Absolutely.
So that was my goal and objective, was to write something that would be placed in history, letting people know that that's our mother church.
And you did well in making that
I
known.
thank you.
Our time has run out. We're grateful to all of you for being here. Madge Lewis, Nancy Vaughn, Bill Ledbetter, for helping us to talk about our faith.
Thank you.
Next month, we'll continue to look at the early days of Murfreesboro, as the bicentennial theme is about our arts and architecture. Please take a moment to participate in and enjoy the many activities scheduled for our bicentennial celebration. For more information, please call our Parks and Recreation Department at 890-5333 or visit www.murfreesborotn.gov. Thank you for joining us today, and we'll see you next month for another episode of Murfreesboro Storytellers, a bicentennial celebration.